Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my opinion. And today, after a long while, I'll be doing my second video on football on this channel. And this is going to be regarding the UEFA Champions League group stage that just recently concluded. So I paid attention to mostly two groups in this group stage, and that was Group B and Group H. So Group B consisted of Real Madrid, Inter Milan, Borussia Mönchengladbach, and Shakhtar Donetsk. And Group H consisted of Paris Saint-Germain, RB Leipzig, Manchester United, and Istanbul Başakşehir. Now, apart from those two groups, the only other group where I actually watched a game in was Group G. And that was a group that consisted of Barcelona, Juventus, Dynamo Kiev, and Ferencvaros. I'm sorry if that's not how you say their name. And the only two games I watched in those groups were obviously the Barcelona versus Juventus games, both those games, because I felt that, and we all felt that for big clubs, they kind of got the easiest group out of them all. And so getting into Group B, even on paper, we kind of all thought that this group was going to be a competitive one because obviously the two bigger clubs in this group, Real Madrid and Inter Milan, and then the other two teams in that group are not really to be taken lightly. And this is Borussia Mönchengladbach, who, finished in the top four in the Bundesliga to get to the Champions League, and also Shakhtar Donetsk, who I believe are champions of Ukraine. And so, with two very good teams to kind of give the bigger clubs a run for their money, this wasn't going to be a very easy group. I understand we were all focusing on, Group H because of obviously the three reputable clubs. And I say reputable clubs despite RB Leipzig are a fairly unknown commodity in Europe. And yet, with what they've been doing, people have taken notice of them, which is great to see. And this group, however, was going to be difficult. I'm talking about Group B. And so how did it go? So I'm going to start off with the team that finished third because I have quite a bit to say about Inter Milan. So the team that finished third was Shakhtar Donetsk. And now, straight away, the thing that strikes out about this team's group stage was the fact that they beat Real Madrid, and the way they beat Real Madrid on two occasions, both home and away. And they went to Madrid first, and then Madrid went to their home stadium, and they still lost there. So that's the thing. I feel that apart from those two games, I think they lost to Borussia Mönchengladbach, and they drew against Inter as well. And what I'm trying to say is that they didn't exactly, apart from those two games, they really couldn't get this performance apart from those two games. But I still do feel like not many teams in the world can boast of beating Real Madrid twice in the same season, and especially really in the same group stage. And so I feel like they are a good team. I mean, look, they've been champion. They are, I think, the defending champions of their own league, and they have some decent players. And so I do feel like there's a base for them to build from, because despite the fact that they didn't make it past the group, beating Real Madrid is no easy feat. Beating them twice and in the same group stage is absolutely brilliant. And the thing is, despite the fact that they didn't make it to the group, they still finished third, and so they're in the Europa League. And I hope that they can build from the good performances that they put in against Real Madrid. So that's Shakhtar Donetsk, and now the team that finished second. And this is the team that I thought they had actually played, discounting that last game where they kind of got outclassed and they really looked off the pace. Borussia Mönchengladbach had actually played the most impressive football, in my view, in the group. And it's because, the 2-2 draw against Inter, and I think they beat Shakhtar first. There was a 2-2 draw against Inter, and then what happened was Real Madrid went to the Borussia Mönchengladbach's home stadium, and Mönchengladbach were actually winning 2-0. And what happened was Casemiro and Benzema, they got two late goals to salvage a very important draw for Real Madrid, because at that point they had lost to Shakhtar Donetsk, and so another loss for them, it would have been, probably looking back at how the group went, they may not have even qualified. They may have just missed qualification, and so that's the reason why it's a very important draw for Real Madrid. And you can't even say that either team played badly. I mean, Borussia Mönchengladbach were very good actually, and they were very disciplined. And the thing is, Real Madrid, you couldn't actually say they played badly, which showed that Borussia Mönchengladbach were in such, they were playing that well that day, kind of just not outstandingly, but what I'm trying to say is that they did keep the game in check for pretty much until the last few minutes, until when Real Madrid, with the players that they have, they know how to play well in the pressure situations, and they got the 2 goals. I mean, it would have been great to see Mönchengladbach win that game because they thoroughly deserved it, but Real Madrid got the 2 goals. And now back to Mönchengladbach. It's that this team, despite the fact that they did play well in they still played, I think, the best football of the group, discounting their last game, as I said. I still feel that you could tell that they weren't the finished article. And it's that there were games, for example, against Inter, that it was when Inter beat them 3-2. Yes, if the third goal had counted, it would have been 3-3 and Inter would have been knocked out of the Champions League. But what I'm trying to say is that even then, it was a bit of you were happy that they did score the goals, but it's the fact is, despite the fact they're a team that plays good football, they don't have the striking quality. I mean, like the names that you look at the team sheet, despite the fact they are good players, they have Marcus Thuram, they have Alisson Player, they have Zakaria, they have the 2 central defenders in Ginter and Alvedi, and Jan Sommer, who's always brilliant, and so on. It's just, they have good players, but as a team, like gelling together, they don't really seem like a threat. And that's the reason why, despite the fact that they did, produce good performances, it was kind of, you never really saw them getting to that next level. And in the end, that's what happened. I mean, yes, they got past the group because of the stalemate between Inter and Shakhtar, but if they don't improve, I mean, depending on their luck, they could face a really big and reputable team in their next round even. And if they don't improve, then this could be a terrible, time for them. And that's the reason why they have been doing pretty well in the Bundesliga. And again, I'm talking about the Bundesliga because you saw last year, they were actually first leading up into Christmas in last season. And the thing is that, yes, we kind of even then thought Bayern Munich would still win the league. Even then, we didn't want to discount Bayern, and in the end they recovered brilliantly and they won the league. But I'm saying that after that, the wheels kind of fell off for Mönchengladbach, and in the end they actually struggled to. I was actually surprised they finished in the top 4, because you even saw they lost to other good teams like Leverkusen, and then finished 5th. And so again, I was very surprised that they actually finished in the top 4, but they have been playing some good football this season, and they're doing pretty well in the Bundesliga again this season. And so, again, as I said, I feel that this team, you never really thought, despite the fact how well they played, you never thought they were going to take that extra step to really be more clinical in a sense and really give a statement win. You didn't really see them doing that. And that's why I'm saying, despite the fact that, again, they deserve to get out of the group or go through past the group stage because they have played the best football in the group overall, but I feel that they know they have to improve, and yeah, that's all there is to it, really. And now Real Madrid. With all the inconsistencies in La Liga and the fact that they lost to Shakhtar, and really the fact that, if it wasn't for the draw against Mönchengladbach in the first game they played against them, I mean, this could have really, they may not have even made it out of the group stage, and there would have been all sorts of, speculations on Zinedine Zidane's job going around. But in the end, they made it past the group, and the thing is now they've got 2 really classy performances consecutively. It was the game against Mönchengladbach where they outclassed them 2-0, and recently, just yesterday, the Madrid derby where they outclassed Atletico Madrid 2-0. And this was, it was such an important game to win, because if Atletico Madrid had won that game, and if more inconsistencies had crept in for Real Madrid, I mean, this could have even been a season where neither Barcelona or Real Madrid would have won the title, and Atletico Madrid, who I really wanted to win it, I still do. I mean, even though they lost that game, if they can just somehow get their act together, because we never know, Real Madrid may have days where they may lose games. And so, coming back to Real Madrid, I feel that these are 2, really classy performances that we've seen. And obviously, in both these games, I thought Toni Kroos was brilliant, Luka Modric is brilliant as well. And it's just that they've shown their class. And coming back to the Champions League as well, I thought that They took advantage from the start. I mean, they just kind of they showed their class, and they were really good. And because they were really good, Mönchengladbach, I feel they just kind of lost their mental rhythm, and they look really off the pace. You saw, Thuram was just, and not only him, everyone was just ambling around. They were at least like a few yards off the ball, and so Madrid could pass it around freely. And yeah, they just completely dominated that game, and they also showed how good of a team they are when they won this vital game in the Madrid derby. And yeah, I just feel that, again, I'm not sure you can use this as, base this on what's going to happen further on in the Champions League, but I'm saying that despite all the criticism, they have shown that they are a brilliant team, and there's a reason why they've won the Champions League 13 times. And it's the fact that, again, this season they didn't make a signing at all. And I know other people would have thought that, especially last year, you saw the way they went out to Manchester City. And that's the thing where I thought this team has, and even now, kind of, it's plateaued to a very high level of performance. And it's actually the reason why they won La Liga as well, because of a very high performance level. But it's kind of saturated. And I feel that, especially last year, the way they went out to City, it wasn't enough to trump a Manchester City. Especially look at one player, Kevin De Bruyne, and you compare him with pretty much all the other Real Madrid players. Despite how well the Real Madrid players perform, I mean, I think the whole speculation on Kroos, I don't get why it's happening. I mean, he still plays very well. So, I mean, I've never speculated on him. I don't know why it's going on. But I'm saying that the fact is that the Real Madrid players you saw last season, you would have thought, and it's just they kind of plateaued to a very high level of performance. Whereas Kevin De Bruyne, etc., in Manchester City, they were kind of really, they seemed more, in a way, lion-hearted. And what I'm trying to say by that is they just seemed better. And they just seemed to have more of an incisiveness, more of a flair about them, kind of, you'd be more afraid of them despite the fact that you know the class of these players. And I guess that's what went on. You look at even Karim Benzema, how good he is. But then again, you'd kind of say he's saturated. And I feel that that's a problem that they may still have. They may still have a problem that despite the fact their players, they do show class, against the bigger teams that comes through, they may not exactly be able to match their firepower in a sense. They can knock off the other teams, and the thing is, it's going to take some firepower to, outmuscle Real Madrid. I mean, it's going to take some Manchester City level firepower, but I'm saying that that's one thing that they would be thinking about. But I'm very happy for them that, amidst all the speculation, they've shown their class, and that's the thing, really. It's just that I hope that, I mean, if this can translate to getting some momentum against the bigger teams and these players can really hit that, I mean, they are legends of the game, all of them. But I'm saying that if they can hit their stride against the bigger teams, this may be a very entertaining watch. And I always think Real Madrid, when they're playing well, are the most entertaining team to watch. And so, yeah, that's Real Madrid, champion side, and I hope they get far. Now coming back to a side where, I mean, you look at finishing first place, well, this is finishing last place. And the thing is that you saw last year's group that Inter were in, and it consisted of, the other bigger teams was Barcelona and Borussia Dortmund. And so you look at this year and you think Inter are, Real Madrid and Inter are the biggest teams in that group, and it's probably significantly bigger, with no disrespect, than the other teams in the group. And you would have thought this would have, all right, Inter surely would qualify in second place at least, and they didn't. And actually, this is the kind of problem. I'm going to compare this with last year because I feel that there's a lot of things different between last year and this year. So last year, I think the Inter, obviously, Antonio Conte came in, and there were, some few changes at the club in terms of the way they played. I mean, before they kind of used to play really slowly, and they weren't really renowned for their system because quite frankly, nothing was happening for Inter in a while. And the whole Mauro Icardi situation didn't exactly help either. And so, yes, Spalletti was sacked, and they got Antonio Conte in, who is a brilliant manager. And yeah, he relies on defensive tactics. And it's the thing is that you saw Inter, and with the way they looked like they were enjoying themselves. And what I'm trying to say is that, especially, you saw up until the Barcelona game, they were actually unbeaten in their league. I think the first 7 games in Serie A, they were unbeaten. And Lautaro Martinez, when they went to the Camp Nou, Lautaro Martinez scored off a mistake. He capitalized on a mistake by a defender, and then Inter were actually playing pretty well. When you kind of thought, when the first half ended, Inter were 1-0 up, and you thought if they beat Barcelona, this would be a statement win. Then the problem with Inter was that they kind of, and this is the same problem in the Dortmund game they lost, where they had the lead and they kind of sat back and they couldn't exactly break away either. And again, I felt that how much Lukaku has blossomed into an athlete since that stage has been phenomenal. But at that stage, they couldn't exactly break away, and I don't think we really saw the pace of. Yes, Lukaku didn't play in that first game. Sorry, but what I'm trying to say is that he's still his athleticism has been a big boost. And what I'm trying to say is that they couldn't exactly get the ball forward and they found themselves defending quite a lot. And the problem was when you have teams like Barcelona who have, the players, and I'm still going to include Griezmann in this, he's a brilliant player. But the thing is when they have players like Suarez, Messi and Griezmann, it's just Luis Suarez showed that he's Luis Suarez and just easily, I think even now the best finisher in the world. And he scored 2 great goals. And in the end, Barcelona won the game. And it's just that we kind of felt really bad for Inter. So then, and this was also after a game where they drew to Slavia Prague after being behind. So clearly they would have wanted, some substantial points in this game because the game, in the end, they could have won this game because they did score first. And so they would have been disappointed by that, as we all kind of we felt bad for them. And then Dortmund went to Inter and the San Siro, and they, this was an outclassing. I mean, Dortmund away from home, it's never really, in the Champions League especially, it's never really been something to write home about, especially we saw how they played against Inter and how they played against Paris and how they played against Barcelona in the group stage as well. So Inter won that game. And then Dortmund went back so this was in the Dortmund stadium. Inter went to Dortmund, and then Inter were 2-0 up. And we saw the way they scored their goals, especially the counter-attacking goal where Brozovic laid it through to Vecino, and Vecino scored, making it 2-0 in the 39th minute. Once again, Inter sat back, and Dortmund fought back, and then in the end, they won 3-2. And then in the end, they surprisingly lost to Barcelona's, youngsters side, and they got absolutely outclassed. And Ansu Fati, in the end, he scored the goal that knocked Inter out of the league. And now, I went through all this recounting because what can you see here? This is an Inter team that hasn't come through with, they don't feel as confident as they would have felt last year, because we've seen quite a few games where they've had to outscore the opposition, which usually never happens. As in they don't have to, because especially we saw, I'm going to talk about the Europa League final, because actually, all right, when Godin scored the goal, I think in the 36 minutes to make it 2-2, and we were all thinking, wow, it's a great game. Antonio Conte would not have been very happy with that, because he would know that Inter were losing control of the game. And therefore, when the game gets scrappy, which team would rather a scrappier game? Sevilla, despite the fact that, they did win, but what I'm trying to, there was an element of scrappiness that they had to rely on. Because what I'm trying to say is that, there were all these Diego Carlos penalties, and especially the game against United, when really United were the better side, but Sevilla won. And despite the fact Sevilla had played some good football in the Europa League. But with the game getting more scrappier, we kind of all thought if the game is at that kind of pace and that kind of aura to the game, then we could only see one win. And in the end, Sevilla won the Europa League. And it's that, I'm saying this again because Inter rely on having this constant control in the game. And the problem is that when especially you see the bigger teams, I'm not talking about Sevilla here, I'm talking about when they face Barcelona and also when they face Real Madrid in this season's group stage, they couldn't exactly they can't take the game to the opposition. And also one other point, getting back to this league, their momentum in the league, they are nowhere near as defensively strong this year as last year. I thought last year they were probably, I would say, the best defensive team in Europe. But in the end, especially at the time when they came into the early stages of the group stage, full of confidence, I'd say they were. But Again, it didn't really work out that way against the bigger teams, as I said. And this year, they haven't even been defensively great against both the smaller teams in Serie A, where last time you would have said, well, they would knock off easily. It would be a really dull game where they'll just get the job done. But instead, no, there were all these 4-2s and stuff where Inter won, and they had to score 4 goals. And again, you don't really see this Inter trying to outscore the opposition, but they had to because they had conceded 2 goals, which for a defensive team is never ideal when you concede. Well, 2 goals especially. And this is the thing. We saw against, they had a 2-2 draw against Mönchengladbach. And they got absolutely outclassed by Real Madrid, I thought. I mean, all right, it was 2-2 because after Real Madrid scored 2, in the first game, Real Madrid scored 2 goals and Inter scored 2 more goals. And we all thought this game's getting interesting until Rodrigo came on as a substitute and then they scored. Real Madrid scored. But this is the thing here, is that despite all that happened, despite Inter made a comeback, you kind of compared Real Madrid and Inter, and you always thought the firepower that Real Madrid have. I mean, Inter could not take the game to Real Madrid when, if they kind of hit their stride. And Real Madrid did hit their stride, and so Inter lost both those games. In the second game, they lost it, and Arturo Vidal got one of the most stupid red cards I've ever seen in my life. We kind of have to think, was something going on before the game? Was he mentally in a bad space? Because what I'm trying to say is that we could all kind of see that it probably wasn't a penalty, and still there was no need for Vidal to kind of get in the referee's face, because I'm sure part of his mind was saying, well, all right, fair enough, it isn't a penalty, but maybe he was kind of thinking about something else, before the game, and maybe was kind of in a bad mood. So I think that's kind of something we have to look at. But that was just a tangent that I went on, and so coming back to Inter, I just feel that they're not enjoying themselves this season. There isn't this kind of last year where there was kind of, can they kind of defy the odds, despite the fact that we knew there were more, as I said, they couldn't take the game to the opposition. And so we didn't expect them to go on and win the thing, obviously, but we thought they could really, especially with the way they counterattacked, how enjoyable it was to watch. We kind of thought maybe Inter could, really do something. But instead, I think the problem is with what they were doing in the league this year, we kind of knew that it wouldn't happen. And we expected Inter to qualify. I expected Inter to qualify. And the fact that they didn't and not even getting into the Europa League is quite frankly terrible for them. And they're probably not going to really win the league because, I can't see them winning the league. So, things aren't going very great for Inter Milan, and so that's on Inter Milan. I mean, honestly, they could have qualified easily. I mean, not easily, but come on. I mean, they are a bigger team than Mönchengladbach and Shakhtar Donetsk, and they should have really qualified, but they didn't. And that's Group B, and Real Madrid and Mönchengladbach have gone through. So now Group H. Group H, I'm going to start off with a team that finished first, and that was Paris Saint-Germain. So as a PSG fan, in the early stages of the tournament and our poor start domestically, I was kind of thinking, has the loss to Bayern Munich really affected, our players? Because not in like I'm not telling them off for this, because it would be after getting so close, and that's the tournament that they're all judged on, because as Ligue 1's kind of labeled as a farmers league. And so the thing is that I thought the fact that they got so close and then they lost, and especially with all the speculation on transfers going around, and especially about Kylian Mbappe at the start of the season made a revelation that he would like to leave the club. I know that he's kind of said he would extend the contract on certain conditions, but still, I'm saying that the fact that the big players saying that they would leave the club was I guess there was a more thing where we had to get far in this competition again to keep those big names. Or maybe even if they do leave, we have to make the most of this year to get far in the Champions League and win it. And so looking at how the poor start domestically and in the Champions League as well, when we lost to United in a very bad way. Yes, they played very well, but we were also, very off the pace. And especially with all the suspensions flying around, especially after the Leipzig game where there were just all these frustrated red cards. All right, the lack of, the depleted squad would or the depleted starting 11, maybe for Liga. I mean, especially that we've recovered very well and we are at the top of the table now. But what I'm trying to say is that especially in the Champions League, we were kind of thinking, well, how would it go? Because even the win against Istanbul Başakşehir, it was very unconvincing. And this was kind of a thing where our first three games was lost against Man United, won unconvincingly against Istanbul, and then lost while being ahead. We were first ahead against RB Leipzig, and then we lost the game. And then after, we were actually playing very well in the first half, and then they got the goal, and then they kind of took the ascendancy, got the second goal, and then we lost the game. However, from then it's been a very pleasing recovery. As I said, we're top of the table in Ligue 1, and also we've had some very good results in the Champions League. The next game, a 1-0 win against RB Leipzig again, and there was a win against United that was very vital for both teams, and that's probably the reason why United got knocked out, because you never quite know what RB Leipzig are going to do. And despite the fact they lost 5-0 to United, they went and beat them 3-2, or rather United went there and they lost 3-2. And so yeah, I feel that I actually have a very good, yes, there is a problem, and I do feel that I don't think our midfield is. This is the thing. One, apart from Verratti, no one can pass the ball forward. And two, I don't think the midfield is really, they're not making any mistakes. This is the problem here. I think if you look at how the midfield is, there's not really any flair in it. And despite the fact that you have people like Danilo who are very good, he's been good defensively. But what I'm trying to say is that, especially so in the United game, people kind of ran around the midfield. And the problem is, especially the defensive line, when threats do come our way, and, they do come our way quite a lot. We've seen that, all this time. But I'm saying that they actually defend it very well. But the problem is it gets to the defensive line far too much. And I don't know how we're actually going to fix it. I just feel that, especially to be in that game, to be a United side that had got, momentum. I think that was afterwards. But I'm saying that, they were playing decently well and they were favourites to top the group. And I felt that it was a very good thing to beat them, despite the fact that it was very unconvincing, because I felt that would really give the confidence in a way. Because until then, it was really even that game was very unconvincing. And I felt that as a PSG fan, I didn't think we were going to do badly in the Champions League, but I didn't want it to get into a kind of thing where we were undercooked in terms of good performances going into the knockout stages. And then they had the game against Istanbul, where unfortunately it was postponed by one day because of the racist incident with the fourth official, but rather fourth official using that a term. And the thing is that, yeah, we went the next day and we won 5-1. And this was a performance that was due. And I'm saying this because throughout a season full of mediocrity, there wasn't one good game that certainly I can remember to say, wow, we played really well. We have a star-studded squad. Look at the names in our squad. And it just, finally, the game against Istanbul Başakşehir, it was this was the route that you would expect a top, a star-studded team like PSG to kind of have, or at least good performances on a regular basis. And Neymar scored a hat-trick, Mbappe scored a brace, and they beat Istanbul 5-1. And a performance that, despite the fact it was against Istanbul, it will give them some really good confidence, going into the knockout stages. They finally got that really good clinical performance out before, they face probably the bigger and better teams. So then there's the team that finished second, and that's RB Leipzig. And again, they were kind of in a state where they were fighting for qualification, especially after the loss against PSG, the 1-0 loss. They were fighting against qualification. They beat Istanbul Başakşehir, and then their task was to beat United. And United only needed a draw to go through. But the problem is, I feel that United the two early goals by RB Leipzig in the end unsettled United. And despite the fact that it says 3-2, RB Leipzig got the two early goals, and that really unsettled United and led to a shock exit from the Champions League for United. But however, I feel that, it's just that this is the thing with RB Leipzig. they are kind of the masters of build-up play. And I'm saying this, we can all see this. Our outside of Timo Werner, they don't have this real forward player who has goals in them. Yes, Sabitzer gets goals, and yes, the midfielders chip in sometimes. But apart from that, there really isn't much. And this is the frustrating thing. I mean, I think the United game where the 5-0 loss was an anomaly because we've seen how brilliantly Leipzig defend usually, and they're a very well drilled team, and they are, as I said, the masters of build-up play, because it's so frustrating to see a team that's this good in other facets of the game not have this standout forward, because I think they kind of went for a different approach this year, because obviously before there's Werner and then Poulsen's still there. And the thing is that we saw in other games, we saw especially in the PSG game, I think, PSG game, the 1-0 game, where they tried to play aerial balls over to Poulsen, as who, okay, no, sorry, I'm thinking. Okay, no, yeah. They tried to play it to Forsberg. I think it was also in the other game, in the game against, the first game against PSG. They actually tried to play aerial balls to Forsberg, who isn't very good physically. And that was the issue. I just felt that their build-up was, the final ball was very inconsistent to what their team usually would do, which they wouldn't try and test the physicality of players like Forsberg or even Werner, because they would know that they're not that physical. But I felt that they've got Sorloth, and even though he didn't really win any headers against PSG when he came on in the second game, I felt that it was a much better, it was kind of, I would say they kind of got a bit closer to finding that forward, because it also gave them another option to do overhead crosses, which wouldn't have been an option with Werner and Forsberg. And despite the fact that, as I said, it didn't win headers, I think RB Leipzig can, this may be a bit of a stretch, but they can kind of possibly try and look to Sorloth as maybe starting him and kind of looking for him to be that forward who provides them with goals and kind of rounds off their team, because really the lack of goals from a real striker in that team is really hurting them. I mean, Poulsen's finishing in the Champions League for a while now has been horrendous, and yeah, I feel that they really need this clinical striker. But a huge positive is, I mean, obviously you saw that 3-3 draw against Bayern Munich, a game that RB Leipzig would have liked to have won because they were 3-2 up. But they tried to hang on, but Thomas Muller scored the third goal in the end. And this is the thing here. I feel that especially we've seen Dortmund's 5-1 loss to, I don't remember who, and now Lucien Favre has been sacked. And so I feel that we always look at the Der Klassiker and as we kind of say, these are the most two reputable sides in the league, and can Dortmund beat Bayern Munich? And obviously there is the title race, but also just finally think Bayern Munich can lose to Dortmund, because obviously it's kind of been a bit of an outclassing. And I know this latest game was a 3-2, but in the end Dortmund were never really in the game. I mean, they did score first. And so, yeah, that was that. And the thing is that I feel that Dortmund have unintentionally handed the reins over to RB Leipzig in saying, it's your time to challenge Bayern now, because, the title's kind of gone out the window for Dortmund. I mean, especially with the inconsistent results. I mean, I don't actually think they've got a win in their home stadium in the last 3 games. And thinking of their 5-1 loss in the latest game, I think the title race is kind of gone for Dortmund. And it's just that I think it is on RB Leipzig to this. It's going to be a bit hard for them, because obviously you look at what Bayern Munich have really as in Robert Lewandowski as the striker that gets them goals. And honestly, as far as strikers are concerned, RB Leipzig don't have that, and I think they will kind of find it hard to keep up with Bayern in that regard. But I feel that, as I said, looking at the Der Klassiker to think that this can cause an upset, I think that those days may have gone, because despite the fact how good of a team Dortmund are, all the players look like shadows of themselves when they come up against Bayern. And I feel that now it is really time for RB Leipzig to take responsibility and really take the challenge to Bayern Munich. Because not only this game, we saw in the 0-0 draw in last season, Sabitzer and Werner had two clear-cut opportunities and they unfortunately didn't take them. And we saw the kind of title race, I'd say, because we kind of thought it would be a title race, but we still knew Bayern would win the league. And especially if Leipzig had won that game, then it may have been a bit more closer than it was. But I feel this season, if Leipzig can really get some results, I feel that this can, maybe Bayern may just edge them, but it'll be a very, very close season. So now Man United, and this is the thing, I'm going to be honest here. If there was two games that I watched of them in detail, it was both the games against PSG. I mean, obviously they destroyed RB Leipzig 5-0 in the first time they met them, and I watched a bit of the second game, and yeah, they conceded the 2 goals early, and it kind of was, well, you thought RB Leipzig had hit their straps, and it was gonna be very hard to win the game from there. I still thought, especially with 2 early goals against such a good team. And yeah, they didn't win that game and they got knocked out. And all you can say here is that they got momentum, especially, that game against Southampton where they scored 3 goals and they won it from virtually nowhere. And it's that they had been putting in some good performances and they were favourites to top the group. And in the end, the only thing you can say was in their final 2 games in the Champions League, they didn't win those 2 games when they kind of had to. I mean, they would have thought if we win against PSG, then, we're automatically through. And now PSG have the thinking to do. But what I'm trying to say is that they didn't win those games. They lost against PSG. And still, even though I thought that United were the better team, they lost against PSG. And they also lost against Leipzig, where Leipzig, got the upper hand from the start. And I do feel bad for them, despite in the Premier League I support Arsenal. I do feel bad for United because, look, I mean, let's be completely honest. Until the semi-finals and so on, the Europa League is a very, very bad league to watch. And honestly, it's just like, especially supporting Arsenal, when we all think when we won the FA Cup and then we're thinking we're in Europe and it's the Europa League. I mean, it's kind of at this point, we don't even want the Europa League anymore because this is the thing. So this is what usually happens for us in the Europa League is we beat the really bad teams and then we get further in the tournament, and obviously we lost to, I think, Olympiacos in the last season. But the thing is that we saw, especially in our loss against Chelsea in the final 2 years ago, we get up near the top, and the thing is, near the top there are actually some pretty decent teams, and I'm saying decent, they're very good teams at the top, and in the end we lost to them because again we don't have as much firepower as they do. And yes, we beat Chelsea to in the FA Cup final to get the Europa League, but for me it's just I'm going on a tangent to say I felt very bad to see United play in the Europa League, especially last season where we saw how well they were doing towards the end. I mean, they finished third, which especially with from the start of the season that they had, and I felt that they have got some very unfair criticism as well. And I do feel sorry for the manager that even in wins, he doesn't get credited hardly enough, and also in losses, they kind of go for him straight away, and they don't think that United still have gaps in their squad that they have to fill. And so yeah, I felt very bad that they were playing in the Europa League last year. I was happy for them that they finished third, but unfortunately now they have to go back to the Europa League, and obviously the whole Pogba situation after this is getting really. I'm not sure if he's gonna. We've been saying this for a long time, and in the end he has stayed put at United. But this time, I mean, mentally, I'm really not sure. Not only him, I'm not sure any of the players are going to think it was there in the palm of our hand, and now all the excitement's gone, and we're going to go to the Europa League. And it's just playing against all these sides that we can probably beat easily. And it's just, yeah, I feel a bit bad for them, but it is what it is. And in the end, I hope that United can, they've done decently in the Premier League, and I hope that they can continue doing decently in the Premier League. And now Istanbul Başakşehir, I don't really have much to say about the team, but they did beat United, and it's probably the one loss that really United will look back on and kind of say, did we really need to have lost that game? And the answer was obviously no. But in the end, it's good for Istanbul, champions of Turkey, and they beat United. So despite the fact that they haven't got Europa League football either, and they lost to PSG 5-1 in their last game, I thought that, they beat United, and there's nothing really much to say. I think that for them, we never really thought they would get out of the group. And thinking about the fact is that they beat United, I think it is pretty good. They can kind of be, well, fairly satisfied with what they've done. So now getting to Group G. Now, obviously, I'm not going to talk about the other two teams. I mean, no disrespect to them, but I'm saying that I didn't really watch them enough or at all to really kind of get an opinion on them. So the team that finished second in the group, Barcelona. And again, as I said, in fact, you know what? I'm going to kind of combine both these two teams together, because obviously I only watched both these two teams play against each other, and I'm going to say this. We're looking at Juventus versus Barcelona, and we're looking at Messi versus Ronaldo. And this is the thing. First game, Messi there, no Ronaldo. And straight away we think, we still think that, all right, Barcelona will beat Juventus. And in the end, without Ronaldo, Juventus's deficiencies were kind of exposed in that game. And yeah, this should have already been a 5-0 loss, but it was a 3-0 loss. And this was really an outclassing. Barcelona completely outclassed them. And then we've seen in the second game. And the second game is that Ronaldo is there and Messi is there. And with how good of a pressure player Ronaldo is, I mean, of course, Juventus were obviously already qualified, but it's just it was against Barcelona, it was against Messi, and of course Ronaldo didn't really have to do anything in the game, really. Even we saw him defending a little bit once there towards the end, but he scored 2 penalties, and yeah, I mean, he got the goals for Juventus, and in the end it was a 3-0 outclassing, and the team just looked better. Yes, they had a few more players back that they didn't have in that first game against Barcelona, but it was an all-round better performance from the team in general. And I thought Morata had a very good game. He was tracking back very well, with Ronaldo kind of staying higher up the field for most of the game. And especially with those, he of course it went over the bar, but his glancing headers that he gets. I just think that this season for Juventus, I mean, he's looked better in this early part of the season for Juventus than he's looked at the time that he was at Atletico Madrid. We never saw him really getting to this kind of a level, because we immediately thought that we didn't really think he would take responsibility in a forward line that needed responsibility, and has kind of got responsibility now because they've got Luis Suarez in. But it's that, yeah, we never really thought him to kind of give the performances that he's been giving in this season, but he's been good. And as a second forward to Ronaldo, he's been very good. And so I feel that with this, I think they complement each other, especially on what we saw in that second game where he's tracking back and Ronaldo kind of stays up in the field. You'd rely on Ronaldo to get the goals, but Morata physically isn't bad either. And so, yeah, I felt that it was a good front two that Juventus had kind of exhibited in that game. And this is the thing here. With Messi, no Ronaldo, Barcelona you think would win. With Ronaldo and with Messi, you think Juventus would win. And with neither of them, you think Barcelona would win. And that's the thing here. I just felt that I still think with I still think with Juventus is the fact that without Ronaldo, it would have been a lot harder. And I feel like, yes, the other players did play well. And I think that Juventus will get decently far in the competition. But I think that there's only Ronaldo who has that you look in the starting lineup and you think Ronaldo, okay, he can take the game away from us on his own. Because Paulo Dybala's out of form, unfortunately. And that's why we've seen him not start, but especially, he was out of form. And also for this system, Paulo Dybala probably wouldn't have suited this system. So I could understand why with both those things he was on the bench. And I just think that apart from Ronaldo, they don't really have this player who's saying, look at me. And I feel like that's going to be the big issue for them going further. But I do hope that, I do like Juventus. And you never know, with players like Ronaldo, he could carry them to, well, very far in this competition. And the other players who are very good as well, if they combine and chip in here and there, I still think that Juventus can get far in this competition. Then there's Barcelona, who they had all those wins up until that final game, but the only problem is that combined with La Liga inconsistencies and the fact is I think they're ninth in the table, which I mean I honestly can't see them winning the league. If they win the league, it will actually be a very big achievement because with Atletico Madrid, yes, they lost to Real Madrid yesterday, but Barcelona, if they keep on losing to these other mid-table sides with no disrespect, this may be very difficult. And it's obviously then they lost to Juventus and well, Messi actually, I thought in the game he actually played better than Ronaldo. I thought that he had, he's more involved in the game and you saw the amount of shots. He's kind of the only player really who did anything for Barcelona. Unfortunately, he kept on hitting them straight at Buffon and he kind of looked very helpless at the end, Messi. And I feel like Barcelona, look, all right, it was at the start. It was a pretty emotional thinking from me. Well, obviously I wasn't emotional, but it was emotional thinking from me to say when Barcelona let Luis Suarez go, it was kind of like I was a bit. Yes, I thought that he found in a more slower paced team. I mean, Suarez could really improve Atletico Madrid. I thought, and of course he's still scoring goals, shows how brilliant player he is. But the thing is that looking back, I kind of understand why for this system that Barcelona have, the 4-2-3-1, I can understand why Luis Suarez probably wouldn't have been a part of that. I mean, especially it's much more fast paced now, and I think Luis Suarez may not have been able to really kind of, I mean, or rather, it relies on being fast paced, and I'm not really sure that Luis Suarez would have been able to cope with that level of, with even though Barcelona now don't have a number 9, maybe playing Ansu Fati there, just getting him to run around a little bit, it may have actually been better for them as far as how the team flowed than having Luis Suarez there, despite the fact he would come up with goals. That's one positive, well, not positive, but it's kind of, that's one reason why Luis Suarez probably wouldn't have fit in that system, but this is the other problem. They don't have goals. I mean, without a number 9, I mean, we even saw in that second game against Juventus, Griezmann doesn't really go run into the box that much. He's a second striker. He's a brilliant second striker, but you're not going to rely on him to really take the world by storm and getting all those goals as Suarez gets, despite how brilliant a player Griezmann is, one of my favorite players. But despite the fact that he probably provides even better work rate than Suarez does. And Suarez obviously links up brilliantly, but we've seen how brilliantly Griezmann links up and how he tracks back defensively. He's a brilliant player. But I'm saying that, one, he is low on confidence. He doesn't actually seem, well, I feel like there's a bit of people in Barcelona don't exactly rate him, and I understand he just seems very low on confidence, and he hasn't really been allowed to settle, if I'm completely honest. At the start he was being played out of position and he never really mentally recovered from that, and he hasn't so far. And I feel that he's not a traditional number 9, and so he doesn't make the runs that Suarez does, and that's the reason why opportunities in the box, especially from aerial balls, kind of went begging. And Messi isn't a number 9 either, so we kind of have this team that, they don't know well what they are, because we've seen all these players like Ousmane Dembele he hasn't exactly fulfilled his potential yet, and there's kind of these conundrums all around the team. I mean, defensively they weren't exactly great, and the problem is there's Sergio Busquets and there's Miralem Pjanic, and obviously now Miralem Pjanic does deserve more of a run of games than Sergio Busquets, and Miralem Pjanic expressed his frustration publicly that he wasn't getting enough game time. But at the same time, Pjanic isn't that great defensively. He's probably one of the best passers of the ball that I've ever seen, but he isn't that great defensively, and that's kind of the problem why, especially we saw with one goal where I think Ramsey was it was a second goal where Ramsey was running and Pjanic in the end didn't really get back. And that's the reason why Ramsey continued to run, past the ball to, I don't remember who it was, but then they passed the ball to I think Ronaldo passed the ball to Cuadrado, the cross, and McKennie volley. And so, yeah, I feel that Barcelona's defensively, they haven't been great. And The fact that they don't have a number 9 is a very big problem. And so despite the fact they have all these names in Messi, Griezmann, De Jong, Pjanic, Dembele, PK, they have Busquets as well, Ter Stegen. I mean, you can't really blame the goalkeeper, but Jordi Alba. It's that they don't you don't know what this team's gonna do, and they look really still. And I saw this video on ESPN FC that they said they may not qualify, they may genuinely not qualify for the Champions League, but I still think that they will qualify. I think that again we shouldn't really, because the problem with La Liga is that despite it's not exactly the most strongest of league outside some good teams. And so I feel that if Barcelona can kind of show their class, I know it's very hard to say that now, but if they can kind of get a good run of games, and I'm sure they will finish in the top four, but I'm saying the things aren't looking very great for Barcelona, and well, yeah, they have to improve really, and that's Barcelona. And so yeah, that was my take on groups B, H, and the two teams from Group G in the season. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and please share this video with your friends. And remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?